Hey, welcome to You Gotta Be Kidding Me, episode 5. This part looks at the processes that occur at the thin descending limb of the loop of Henle. If you haven't already watched the summary of the loop of Henle, this should be nice and short and sweet. Okay, so remember the point of the loop of Henle is to concentrate sodium towards the bottom of it. So by this countercurrent thing, essentially you have a high concentration of sodium at the bottom and a lower osmolality at the top side of the loop of Henle. And this essentially means that you can have a concentration gradient throughout, which means that water can be reabsorbed throughout um, the descending limb, which means water can be reabsorbed back into the capillaries. And also, remember the point of the loop of Henle as well is to make a salty medulla, and that also affects water balance in the cortical collecting duct as well. But anyway, so we said the thin descending loop of Henle reabsorbs 15% of water. Considering a lot of water has already been reabsorbed in the PCT and PST, this 15% constitutes quite like a big chunk of the water that's left. And this happens because the thin descending limb expresses a high number of aquaporin ones. These are permanent water channels that allow water to be drawn out by osmosis into the ascending vasa recta. It's important you know that it's the ascending vasa recta. How does this happen? If you remember, the thick ascending limb makes the medulla very salty by pumping out sodium into the medulla. But the thick ascending limb is impermeable, whereas the thin limb is permeable. Remember, the rule is where salt goes, water follows, basic osmosis. So, because salt is pumped into the medulla by the thick limb, but water is going to follow, but water can only follow where there's aquaporins that let it follow. So, therefore, it's the thin limb that's responsible for reabsorption of water. And that's basically the point of the loop of Henle, to concentrate stuff so that we can reabsorb water. Okay. The ascending vasa recta has more solutes in it than the descending limb of the loop of Henle. So that means that the descending loop of Henle is hypoosmotic, which means it has less solutes, which means that water is going to move passively from the thin descending limb into the ascending vasa recta. And this is because if you look at the descending vasa recta, so on the other side, on the thick side, the descending vasa recta has picked up lots of ions, has picked up sodium and picked up urea. So it's going to have more it's going to be more concentrated. By the time it gets to the ascending portion of the vasa recta, which is on the thin descending side, so we've said that the ascending side now has more solutes because it's picked them up from the descending side of the vasa recta. And in contrast, the descending loop of Henle will have less solutes, so therefore is hypoosmotic, so water moves from the thin limb into the ascending vasa recta. It's essentially this point here. Okay, so we've now covered the main bulk of the stuff you need to know about the thin descending limb of the loop of Henle, but just for completeness, there's a few other kind of irrelevant stuff you could be aware of as well. So one thing is that there's passive transfer, a little bit, of sodium chloride from the lumen into the interstitium at the thin descending limb. And another thing is that there's these chloride channels called CLC-Ka, and these allow chloride to move into the lumen in the thin descending limb, i.e. they basically allow chloride channels to be excreted into urine, and that occurs at the thin descending limb. There's also some active sodium absorption too, but not much, to be honest. And in terms of pharmacology, the thin descending limb is nice and easy. It's the only site that cannot currently be targeted by diuretics. So there's no drugs that act on it really, essentially.